Righto, welcome back to the Maximum Cricket Podcast. You're here with Munter. This is episode number 17, and this week we have both Lugsy and Jacko here after Lugsy's massive run, and we have a fantastic podcast for you. We are talking the big news in New Zealand cricket, and now I guess the big bash. Colin de Grandhomme has retired from international cricket under a bit of a cloud of doubt, I would say. We discuss why. Speaking of New Zealand and Aussie, the Chappell Hadlee series starts today and the boys are pumped. We preview and predict the series while also breaking down our top 5 Chappell Hadlee moments. In other news, we talk about the very strange Jonny Bairstow injury in Out or Not Out and what may or may not have happened. And in Coach Corner, we talk about acceptable fielding shoes. But first, grab yourself your favourite snack because it's time for Snack of the Week.
It's a yes bank maximum, the first of this contest. Oh, that is brilliant. It's a hero maximum. On the ground, down the ground, another hero maximum.
Boys, big snack of the week last week. Massive, didn't think I would have to have this sort of conversation this early, but I don't want to take away from Lugsy's triumphant return. You don't want to let him have his time in the sun.
You bought a two-course meal to snack of the week.
You haven't exactly bought a snack either, though. You came with some fried rice. Munter's probably the only one with a leg to stand on.
I will admit I'm right on the precipice.
Well, I think Lugsy, if you just want to take the floor and just sort of, take your time and discuss the victory, and then maybe we'll just sort of set some sort of ground rules for future.
Yeah, well, obviously, thanks to the fans for voting me in and getting my first one. As I say, I was snacking sort of most of the day last Sunday, and then that final top off of the KFC obviously set me over the line. I'll fully grant. I don't think I think the definition in the dictionary, if we want to go there, is a small amount of food eaten between meals. So I don't know if the KFC meal can quite be defined as a snack. But yeah,
it's.
I mean, when you're putting away 24 meals a day, one of them.
Well, that's exactly it.
It's got to be a snack, doesn't it? Yeah,
it's quite funny on the topic of the dish definition of a snack. We've now got the informal. A sexually attractive person. So I was thinking maybe if in the future I ever do happen to get myself a girlfriend, that's how I'll announce it to the world. It'll just be a picture of her for my snack of the week.
We'll probably have to talk about that off here because that could cut off some of our target audience a bit. If you're off the market, we don't want to take away a big section of our audience.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if that's driving the listeners currently. But
yeah, well, actually, to be honest, I didn't want to. I mean, since we're jumping on Lugsy and Jacko was pretty keen to sort of take his legs away. I did sort of notice there were a few extra votes flying in last week, and a lot of people that weren't actually sort of part of the maximum cricket universe, I guess you'd say. So,
oh really?
I do wonder if Lugsy's doing a little bit of, I guess what do you call campaigning behind camera, just sort of getting his votes any way he can. Not to take anything away, but
no, and I will dispute those claims. I've done nothing of the sort, but I certainly am not opposed to it in future.
Okay, Lugsy, so you're on top, so you might as well sort of tee off first. What are you running this week?
Well, I tend to, in full disclosure, it's hard to actually eat the snack during the pod, so I tend to go for a wee pre-snack, and then obviously when you finish the pod, you're pretty happy with your work, so you get a post one. So pre-snack, and this is probably, I am probably pushing the limits again, but I've gone obviously your full pack of Thai chili Doritos. I have paired it though with some kiwi onion dip, which may not be to everyone's liking, but as a patient at the hospital so eloquently told me, I eat some pretty rough tucker. So I've put that together, and I have got a wee caramel milk bar for after the recording.
I'll tell you what, that can't be a coincidence. I feel like I've actually got, you can probably hear it a little bit now, but I've actually got the exact same snack this week. I've actually got a wee
You're kidding.
A Thai sweet chili big share.
Wow.
Big share bag of Doritos. So
the big share might get you over the line. Have you got dip though?
I don't have dip. I actually quite like it because I feel like it's got enough flavour by itself.
It does have a lot, yeah.
Personally, like I feel like if you go and dip, you're going like a flavourless sort of chip, if I may, because we had cheese supreme with our nachos And I think I wouldn't normally have cheese supreme unless it's with nachos. You got to have something with it.
What I like to call a bag of Doritos is just naked nachos. So you sort of just, basically, you're just giving yourself an excuse to have a bag of chips.
Yeah.
Call it nachos, just hold all the toppings.
Similar to asking for like a virgin rum and Coke in town as an excuse to have a Coke.
Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. I guess we'll have to sort that one out later on. But maybe, Jacko, if you come in with a third bag of Doritos here.
Yeah, well, I'll actually zig where you two have zagged. And I've just actually gone for the recent Milo Kit Kat collab.
Wow, that's not bad.
Yeah, getting some mixed reviews. But I mean, for me, it just tastes like a Kit Kat with Milo sprinkled in it, which is, I suppose, everything you could ask for. So, yeah, very tasty. Really enjoyed that. But we'll see if the listeners like that or Thai sweet chili Doritos.
Yeah, Tom's too. Outstanding. Okay. Right, so we'll move on to some cricket, I suppose. And as I said in the intro, probably the biggest news in the New Zealand circles is Colin de Grandhomme retiring from international cricket. And before we talk about, I guess, the circumstances around his retirement, should we just touch on the career of Colin de Grandhomme as a black cap? Because he's a bit of a polarizing character, but when you look back at his career, it's pretty darn successful when you think about it. He averages about 38 with the bat and about sort of 31, 32 with the ball. He's sort of, like, obviously he's not as good as Ben Stokes, but statistically speaking, he's probably better than Ben Stokes, even though, if that makes sense. But you're never going to see him in that light. And I'm not going to say he's better than Ben Stokes for obvious reasons, but
you just have.
yeah, but no, I think he's a very successful black cap, particularly in the Test arena, and I think he was an important cog as New Zealand sort of went into that golden era.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting one, Colin's career, because, yeah, as you said, the stats are there, the results are there, but you sort of watched him play and you sort of thought, like, how is this successful at Test level? He sort of bowled 115 to 120 mids, sort of bopped it about a bit, didn't really look like he had much of a defensive game, but, yeah, as you said, Test hundreds, Test fifers, like all the accolades you could really ask for, but sort of never seemed to. Yeah, I mean, you watch him play and you're like, oh, that'll do a job, but it won't produce the results it did. So, yeah, he was very. I mean, my probably biggest takeaway was, geez, he was a foot on the throat sort of batter, wasn't he? I suppose coming in, if a platform's set and you've got Colin just coming in, teeing off against an old red ball, it's sort of nightmare fuel. And yeah, I think he got a lot of sort of very quick 70s or 80s, sort of batting at 7 with 300 for 4 or 5, and yeah, really sort of put that foot on the throat of the opposition teams.
Yeah, he is, as you say, quite polarising, I guess, and sort of I think probably has had a lot better career than a lot of people realise. I think it feels like maybe he could have been a sort of a bigger star or something. Like he had that ability to become a bit of a cult figure, I feel like, and maybe just didn't quite catch on. The biggest thing, obviously the debut when he burst on the Test scene with a sixer is probably one of the, how he kicked off his career was brilliant. But he was actually very important in our one day World Cup.
Huge.
If Stokes did do what Stokes did in that final, I think Colin might have been man of the match when he got 2 for 25 off 10.
Yeah. And sort of maybe it got in people's heads and the Kiwi fan that all he was a guy that could sort of bash 50 against maybe the lesser teams. He got that brilliant 100 against the West Indies, his first Test 100. And maybe that's all sort of a lot of Kiwi fans saw him as, was maybe a guy that could get a quick fire 50, but maybe didn't quite live up to all his talent. But as you say, Munter, averaged 38 in the Test, done a handy job with the ball, and maybe was a bit of a better cricketer than a lot of people realised.
Like, he got the best out of his ability, because I remember when he came onto the scene, I couldn't have been more anti it. I was like, this guy is like a really good club cricketer, and he just turned into so much more. I guess I'm just trying to think about why people sort of were anti him. It was sort of like just the ways he would get out. It was probably what people sort of didn't like. We talk about that, the famous dismissal or the famous day It's turned out to be his last day of Test cricket actually. When he got run out,
Quite the way to go out.
when he got run out first ball and then bowled that no ball against Stokes and then went off injured. Not the greatest, not the Ross Taylor finish for sure, and then they forget that. And I think the Test before the first innings he was top scorer, things like that. Like people seem to remember all the bad things he does.
Well, I think it's cricketers like him that score like 100 off 80 balls or 70 balls and make it look so easy that it always just going to frustrate people when they don't do that more. I think the casual fan or just a fan that pays a bit of attention sees him do that once and just thinks, why can't he do that more? And that always is going to frustrate fans.
If we sort of talk about, I guess, the why this is happening, if we break it down, obviously there was a Big Bash draft on Tuesday night. It was at the start of the week anyway, and Colin Gronholm's name didn't appear to be in the list, but he was selected 13th by the Adelaide Strikers ahead of a lot of other people, and it raised a lot of eyebrows, particularly from this side of the Tasman, because at the time, Colin Gronholm was a contracted player for New Zealand, which sort of meant he was unable to play in that series unless New Zealand cricket said so. This is during the same time New Zealand was due to travel to Pakistan, and also at the same time New Zealand's Super Smash was going on. So the theory would be he would either be going away with the Black Caps or he'd be playing for ND for the Super Smash. So you wonder, and it's funny how everyone seemed to be quite surprised this happened, including Colin de Gronholm, which is odd because I can't imagine that Jason Gillespie pulled his name out of a hat and just said, we're going to take a punt. Considering during the same draft, a lot of these teams were turning down Faf du Plessis, Andre Russell, a lot of Jimmy Neesham, ironically, because they weren't available for the whole tournament. So it makes you wonder, why would they pick Colin de Gronholm knowing he's a contracted player, unless there was a conversation had prior? So I guess what my question is to you guys, did Colin de Gronholm know what he's doing?
Well, he's obviously known what he's doing, putting his name in the hat. No one in 2022 is naive enough to go, oh, let's just put my name in the hat. Maybe I get picked up, maybe I don't. That's sort of what Ross Taylor's done in retirement. But yeah, I mean, you sign up for a draft. What do you think is going to happen? You're either getting drafted or you're not, and you've got drafted. So you've got to have surely thought through the scenarios either way. He probably, I do sort of believe him that he's probably signed up and gone, yeah, I don't actually think I will get drafted, but might as well just. There's 800 English blokes and applying. I might as well put my name in the ring. But yeah, I think he probably was surprised with getting picked up. But yeah, probably knew he had the retire from international cricket in his back pocket to get out of everything. And I suppose he was probably looking down the barrel of probably not playing a lot for New Zealand in many more formats. So yeah, he probably had that in the back pocket, but. Yeah, probably one of those ones. He was probably genuinely surprised to get picked up, but had his way out.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker for drama potentially, but I probably think there was quite a bit of chatter behind the scenes. I sort of tend to think Gillespie's probably had a word to him and said, look, if you're available, we're going to pick you up. So what are the chances you are available? I just don't think they're going to, as you say, with the players that were also available, I don't think they were picking him unless they had a real belief that he was coming. So I think there was probably a bit, I don't know if it's how legal it is or if that's all allowed, if you're allowed to be in those sort of tampering a bit there. But I think they were probably talking to Colin and saying, look, we're going to pick you up. If you're going to be available, we're going for it. So I would say that he did have this plan and was probably thinking, okay, this is going to be my career path going forward. I'll put the pressure on NZ cricket to let me go, and this is me.
That's where I'm leaning as well, Simon, because I think it's funny when Trent Boult was released from his contract, he obviously had quite a bit of leverage to do so, as he's he's wanted everywhere else. And David White said an interesting comment about how no one's ever come up to him and said that they're looking at this sort of stuff. But yeah, Colin de Grandhomme has essentially done that behind David White's back. So it makes me wonder if there's a bit of a disconnect between New Zealand cricket and the players are starting to get a little itchy, particularly if they're lower down on the contracts list. I suppose it was interesting, like when I read Ross Taylor's book, the last sort of chapter in a bit was about him sort of falling down the contract list, getting dropped from the T20 team, and he sort of was under the impression that he was getting told he was on the way out by where he was on the contract list. And I wonder if a similar thing happened to Colin de Grandhomme. Like they sort of were like, he's not earning much because he's low on the contract list, but you basically have to play whenever we tell you to play. So I do think that this is sort of a way of getting a bit of leverage to say, hey, I want to play, and this is sort of the only way out of it.
And he's not young either. Like, he's at that age. Like, he's 36. If he's got a chance to get a BBL contract, which potentially then, if he has a good BBL, lead to another couple of big contracts, it's sort of time for him to cash in.
Well, that's right. And I guess that sort of leads to the next question, where it's who's next, because everyone's still sort of in the 30s, but there must be a few other players starting to get a little itchy about how much money they could earn elsewhere while also playing for the Black Caps, because I guess the Bolts set a precedent, and also Neesham, where they don't have contracts, but they're still playing for the Black Caps. If you're a contracted player, you're not getting as much rights as they once were, if you know what I mean. If you're good enough, you're making the team. So I wonder, who do we think is next?
Not sort of sure who goes next. I think it's this UAE league and the South African backed IPL one that's IPL backed South African league that's really put the squeeze on, I reckon. In terms of next, like, probably we've sort of talked about it that Finn Allen could look at being that guy, but I mean he's very early on in his career, but he's still had a couple of stints in those leagues. Maybe a Lockie Ferguson. He's sort of got the pace. His Red Bull stuff has probably fallen away with a few injuries in the last couple of years. So that sort of driver to stay in New Zealand and stay on the Black Caps contracted list always seems to be Test cricket. So if that's sort of taken away, maybe it is a Lockie, or potentially Southie's starting to see what Bolt's doing and going, maybe it's time for me to sort of cash in as well. So those are probably the three I reckon could be chances.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably those guys that are starting to burst on the scene as T20 players who aren't got a lot of Red Bull cricket in them. So if you're not playing Test cricket, which as you say is probably still our biggest, the young players are striving for the most in New Zealand. If you're not got to look in there, then it does seem silly why you wouldn't try this. Obviously, not everyone's just going to be able to do it. Not everyone's going to get picked up. So you've still got to be, talented enough where you're going to get picked up. Southie's probably not a bad shout because his name recognition's still probably strong enough that teams will, they're going to take a punt and say, well, this is an experienced cricketer, can do a job for us, well-known player. Younger players can learn of him. Whether that matters as much in these sort of leagues is another story. But yeah, guys like Southie that have already got their name out, and then on the other end of that scale, as you say, someone like Finn Allen who might not play red ball cricket but can probably drive a big price. They're the guys to watch out for, I reckon.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially when you're looking at the young guys. You've got to sort of think what does happen to their careers though, because they're probably thinking, like, if they flame out of 2 leagues and they're not contracted to the Black Caps, or domestic teams don't want to touch them because they've sort of flamed out on them, it's like, where's a guy at 25, 26 going to sit in his career? So, yeah, I think for the young guys, I think that the Black Caps path, I still think you've got to have a bit of time in international cricket before you can cash in. So, yeah, it's a balancing act.
I guess it depends how many of these leagues start popping up as well,
definitely.
though. Like, as we've said before, if it really goes out of control over the next few years and there's leagues popping up everywhere, then maybe you just see more and more players do it because there's just those, spots to fill for a while.
Yeah, 100%.
It was interesting. I don't know if you listened to the competition, the old grade cricketer, but they were sort of touching on how the hundreds getting set up, and sort of a lot of people are basically saying the hundreds only set up to be bought eventually. So it's an amazing time that tournaments could be getting, it happens in other businesses. But yeah, like to think a tournament and other tournaments might just get started solely for the purposes of getting bought out in 5 years is a crazy time.
The IPL is going to keep growing, and they've got their hands in all these pies, and there's going to be more and more tournaments that are going to pop up, because that's where all the money is, and you can't. It doesn't feel like a country can survive without a decent T20 league. So I just wonder what New Zealand cricket can actually do, because, like you said, there's a few options that could do it, and you're probably right. I do think at the moment, like a mid-20s guy is a bit of a risk, because, like you said, if they flame out, they don't have a competition to go. But if these competitions keep popping up, then they're gonna find another chance to sort of get on their feet. What can New Zealand cricket do? I mean, they need to. I mean, the Super Smash is probably one of the lowest sort of quality. I mean, it's not quality. Like, the quality's good. Like the play, if you actually watch the Super Smash, it's as good. It's as good as, like, pretty close to the Big Bash in terms of the quality of players. It's just the product as a whole, the league, doesn't compare to any of these other leagues. And I just wonder if New Zealand cricket could look at something a bit more flexible with these contract lists, whether they sort of still keep contracts but maybe make them smaller, but then sort of bump up their match payments a bit higher, or their series payments a bit higher, so it's worthwhile playing for the Black Caps, but also, you've got contract lists for the guys that aren't making all this money, but also, like, you're still getting your good players playing for New Zealand.
Yeah, I suppose another sort of left field way to look at it would be if you, and I mean, this is really sort of left field, but if you binned off New Zealand contracts altogether, added 4 more onto each association, and had 20 guys in each association contracted year round, sort of run it like the Super Rugby does a wee bit, where you're sort of contracted to a Super Rugby team, but also to New Zealand Rugby. So you've made that commitment, but then you've also got that little bit of flexibility. So, I mean, that could be a way to look at it.
Because New Zealand cricket, they're going to have to do something at some point, and that's sort of why I'm not anti them at the moment. I just feel like their head's in the sand a little bit with when David White says comments around essentially this isn't happening anytime soon.
Maybe they won't have to do anything, because maybe we are just headed for international windows.
But then how does New Zealand cricket make money? Because how do we continue to make money to foster the next talent? Because at the moment we make all our money from ODI cricket and T20 cricket, and we just jam-pack the schedule full of bilateral series that potentially won't exist in 5 years' time. So what's plan B? How does New Zealand cricket actually make money for the next generations?
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing we need to work out. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just literally thinking on the fly of, like, if there's options of New Zealand, almost New Zealand cricket, like, rents out the contract, so you take the player, but that comes with a fee, almost like what happens in football, like that gets paid to New Zealand cricket as another money-making way.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. Or the IPL comes to New Zealand for a month, and we just Mumbai Indians Tiger Volts versus the Chennai Super Kings Canterbury Wizards.
I mean, anything's possible at the moment.
And then we just take this Indian money and we just we run.
Yeah. Take Indian money.
We fixed it. So since we've just sort of talked down bilateral series and it's all going downhill, should we move on to an exciting bilateral ODI series?
Yeah, 100%.
The Chappell Hadlee series, which for us, it's very exciting. Probably for not very other people, it's not for some reason. But the boys are over, the Black Caps are over in Cairns of all places to play 3 one-days against Australia starting Tuesday. I guess the first question off the bat is why? What is it about the series that we care about? Why do we care about it so much?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's always Aussie New Zealand, isn't it? As we always, I guess it's that big brother little brother relationship that seems to be. A lot of us move over there, so there's probably that niggly rivalry that's always sort of been there. I suppose we're that little brother trying to get that win in the backyard, it sort of feels like. And I feel like we get sort of lumped together on the world stage a bit. Like, if you're anywhere internationally, we just get thought of as Aussies with our accents and whatnot. So I think there's that really distinguishable, like, New Zealanders want their own identity, and this is a good way to sort of get one back on the Aussies, which is why we love it so much.
Yeah, it's just a part of all our sport, isn't it? The old New Zealand-Australia rivalry, and as you say, we're probably little brother in this scenario. Like, I personally don't have that sort of hatred that a lot of Kiwis get up for this series because they genuinely hate losing to Australia or just absolutely love beating Aussie, hate all their players.
Hate's a strong word, but you do see it.
Oh, I think there's some genuine hate from a lot of Kiwis to Aussies.
ACC's bigger than that,
Oh yeah, Warner's absolute enemy number one. But yeah, I think it's just, and it's also like, even if it's not Australia, New Zealand, Australia, we always had coverage of that growing up. Like Sky always got the rights, so you always saw Australia, and especially for our generation, like how dominating they were. It was always so big to get a win against them. So it just sort of feeds that sort of want to beat them in that. And just everything Australia did growing up in the cricketing world was like the commentary was just always so good. Like, it was the centre of cricket for I guess kids of our age.
It's almost like you just wanted the Black Caps to do well over there. You just wanted them to do well in front of their fans and their commentary. You just wanted to hear them say nice things about our team.
Oh, it's even as we were starting to get a better team, when Kane sort of was bursting on the scene, and I just so wanted Kane to do well over there, just to be to that acknowledge that Kane Williamson was this great cricketer that we knew he was.
And there's definitely that, when you watch the Aussie commentators, there's nothing the only thing they do is talk about how good Aussies are and how shit everyone else is. So it's
where this hate really comes from.
But I remember one test and Aussie were 30 for 6 or getting absolutely skittled, and the commentators tried to be actually the Aussies should fall over here so their bowlers can go and run rampant on this surface. It's that is never the play, and it was just it's just delusional, almost to the point of delusion sometimes. So you grow up with that, and you're like, fuck, can we just beat these guys, please? Because I just want to shut the commentators up more than anything.
Well, speaking of sort of shutting their commentators up, we'll talk about Australia, just their sort of run into this series. And before yesterday, I guess it was going to be that, Aussie's looking good. They pumped Zimbabwe, 3-0, sorry. But a massive, massive upset where Zimbabwe tipped over Australia in an incredible sort of day, I guess, for the first time ever. And just like that, question marks raised over this Australian team. And I guess, how do you see this Australian team compared to our Caps?
There's some vulnerabilities there, definitely. I suppose it always happens with Aussie. You sort of feel like some of these series, they don't have their big boys play, and it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, they sort of seem to be, they shouldn't be losing to Zimbabwe ever, really. Finch is vulnerable at the top, really is at the moment. Looks out of touch, has for a while, probably needs to go. Sort of saw some stats on Stoinis. He's sort of averaging 18 in the middle overs there. So I think there's some cracks starting to appear. No doubt they'll be sort of smoothed over and they'll probably win the T20 World Cup at home. But for now, we're going to reclaim or hold on to the Chappell Hadlee series, whatever way it is, and 3-0 New Zealand.
Yeah, and I like that. Lugsy, how do you see it?
Yeah, first of all, obviously a big shout out to Zimbabwe, a team that I really loved growing up. Good kit. What I liked about them is, for a long time when we were battlers, they were our team to beat, It was like Zimbabwe's coming over and you're like, here we go.
Yeah.
Time for the boys to get a couple of wins. Actually had some low-key good teams with your Heath Streets and your Flower Brothers. But yeah, I always loved them coming over. And good to see, I have to say, Australia taking that sort of series seriously and putting out their big boys, first of all. But yeah, I was looking through their team a bit today and watched that game. It's a quite oddly balanced team. They seem to maybe be one bowler short, but they do have a lot of bowling options. They've got quite a few all-rounders in the side. Yeah, I don't know. They just look to me like a little bit light on another genuine batter and a little bit light on a bowler. But it also sort of, if it all went well, obviously it's still a very strong side. I don't know. It's just, yeah, they've got a lot of all-rounders and they're playing two spinners most games as well. So it's quite an oddly balanced side at the moment.
They've almost got too many all-rounders. So they're coming in, they don't have enough any speciality at all. So they've got like 3 batsmen.
So I think you've agreed with me rather than the zagging there.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call it balanced. I'd call it sort of unbalanced just because they've got 3 batsmen at the top and then they've got 3 bowlers at the bottom and then the rest are all-rounders. And that's just too many. Like they're sort of asking all-rounders to bat long periods of time and they just can't do it. And they're asking, I mean, Cam Green's doing it with the ball, but they're asking a lot of him. They're basically playing him as a bowler, which is weird. Like
they've probably got Marnus to come into that one day side. Yeah, that'll sort of balance out that batting a little bit. I'd say Maxwell's more of a batter. You get overs out of him, but he probably is a genuine batter at this stage.
I don't like batting him very high though.
No, geez, he's low, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a tough series. Obviously, when like Warner's class and probably should be captain, regardless of what he's doing. Because like Finch it's one thing not scoring runs, but he just looks awful.
He loves to go for a good stint of being out of nick.
He nicked off 3 times again, 3 out of 3 to that left-hander. So like Trent Bolt is going to be licking his lips, and he's doing some weird things with his technique. Like he's sort of cutting across the ball. His bat's like really far. It's like gully, and it's cutting across the ball, and it's not coming down through the line. And then he's sort of like not really using any. He's not going to even weight through the crease. It just looks odd, and it's tough when. Yeah, they look a lot stronger when he's scoring runs. That top 3 makes a big difference. So I'm going to go New Zealand 2-1 because I think Australia should they should be pretty decent, but it's going to be tough, obviously.
I like I'll go with you on the 2-1 share. Always hard to beat Aussie 3 times and 3. Very happy to see the Royal ODIs. So all that 4:00 start time for us here locally, which I'm just ripping.
You get most of that in, eh? Right, lovely start time.
And hopefully we get a few memories to remember because, I mean, we talked a bit before about why this series means a lot to the Kiwis, and I asked the boys to get together their their top 5 moments in Chappell Hadlee history, and there was quite a few. I think I had noted down there was 11 options I had, and then I sort of narrowed it down to my top 5, and I've got a sort of honourable mentions as well. And so how we'll sort of do this, I guess, is we'll start with one of you guys, and then you start with your top 5, and then obviously there's going to be a bit of crossover, and then when it comes up, we'll just talk about that moment as a whole, and we'll say, oh, that was my X, or that didn't make my 5 or whatever, and we'll just sort of go through there.
Yeah, I found it tough doing number 5, but in the end I went the 3rd game of the 06-07 series, which was a lovely run chase in Seddon Park in Hamilton. That was game as a whole. I suppose we won by 1 wicket, and just great memories of that.
Wow, you've come up with the number 5. I've actually got that number 1, so wow. That's breaking it.
3 of my 5 have that series. Yeah, one of the great series, but yeah, I had that at 5.
Just to bring in, I've just cut out there slightly. Was that what have you gone there, Jacko? Because I think this might be my number 1 also.
he's gone the 3rd ODI 2007.
The Mac 100.
The Mac 100. So I've got a full list, and this is why it's my number 1. It just this match just had everything. Like it started off. This is my number 1 big time. We had Matty Hayden 181 not out. Yeah, broken foot and all. Broken foot. I didn't have that down, but broken foot. He's just swinging for the fences. Highest ODI score for Australia at the time. You know that was to beat Australia 3-0. And it gave us all sorts of false hope before that World Cup.
Yeah, because they didn't actually send over their best side, did they?
No, we always forget that. We always forget that. But that's okay, and that's probably a con, I guess.
See, interesting because I had it at 5 because it wasn't obviously nice to beat them 3-0, but we didn't win. Like it wasn't the game we won that series and got the series over the line. Which was interesting. Interesting that we've split that up. But love to hear your guys' number 5s.
My number 5, I've actually gone. It's around that second ODI, but I couldn't really. Not necessarily the match as a whole. It's more the Ross Taylor 100. So obviously Aussie got 330 odd, Hussey man 100. Decent bowling attack, even though it wasn't their full strength. You know, you got McGrath, you got Bracken, you got Sean Tate, and it just felt like someone special had arrived. Like we had this young superstar. He was 22 at the time, 23 maybe. I know he scored that 100 against Sri Lanka, but then this was 100 against Australia. Everyone just felt like this was something special. And obviously the career that Ross Taylor's had sort of adds to this innings, I think. And I also, when I read that Ross Taylor book, it sort of added something to that innings. We had Taylor talks about how he was getting sledged hard by like Shane Watson and it was someone else that quite young. It might have been Sean Tate. And like Ross Taylor, apparently a big sledger, apparently a massive sledger. And he was giving it back. No, he was giving it back. He was absolutely going back at Shane Watson while batting to Sean Tate or whoever else. And McGrath had a word to him and he said something like, "Oh, you're a lippy wee bastard" or something like that. And he said, mate, I can handle it if it's for you. I can't handle it if it's fucking Shane Watson. Which I just think it's pretty massive for a 22-year-old to sort of offer that sort of chat.
Especially to a young Shane Watson who was sort of basically Prince Charming incarnate, wasn't he?
Yeah. Ruffled a few feathers back in the day.
Yeah, he always came across very whiny to me, Shane Watson.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of YouTube clips out where he seemed like a better guy than maybe I thought he was, but very whiny early doors.
Lugsy, what's your number 5?
Yeah, that's a good number 5, by the way. Brilliant 100, and that sort of chat has just really upped it for me. I've actually just gone Pig Dog v Johnson going at it as my number 5.
I had that at 4.
Yeah, just solely for the memory of it. Just like it's just not often one of those sort of things happens on the cricket field, and just to see someone steaming in, bowling fast, especially when you're a young fella, and seeing a batter just sitting there taking it, and then when they're walking towards each other, it's just you don't see it happen often in cricket, and it was just massive. Like I just remember thinking, holy, they could go each other here. They could actually, something could happen here, and it's just sort of sparked in my memory.
He ended up headbutting him in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, he's given him a week. He's headbutted the guy off a helmet.
Just impromptu out or not out, headbutting a helmet. We definitely out on that.
Yeah, you lose that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, that's out. But yeah, that incident, I guess, is my number 5, just because it burns in the memory.
Okay. Oh, I like that. That was definitely on my... It didn't make my list, but it's on my honourable mention. Jacko, it made your number 4, was it?
Yeah, obviously, you'll sort of see as my list progresses, I've got a real fast bowler's take on this, but just lovely to see a quick, all sort of rolled up. So rolled up, in fact, he thought headbutting a bloke with a helmet on was the play. So, yeah, that's got to mean something if that's sort of happening in a game of cricket. So, love to see it. Obviously, don't go headbutting anyone in club cricket round 1.
I'll do my number 4 then, and I know Lugsy, this is definitely on your list, but it's the first ever Chappell Hadlee game, which I forgot until I looked it up. But it's the Matthew Sinclair catch, 2004. Yeah. For me, it's the greatest catch in the history of the game. I'm yet to think of a better catch. And like if I break it down, we've got Oram 120 odd, bangs it in short. Matthew Hayden does that alpha walk down the crease, like you're too slow for me, sort of carry on. Oram bangs it in short. He pulls it with ease. Sinclair is about, he's deep square. He's about 10, 15 off the rope. He's in
an odd position there.
He's in because I guess those boundaries are massive back in the day. So he's got to go 10, 15 off. And he is sprinting hard to his left, like full speed. And this is travelling. And like Sinclair goes full strength, offhand, so it's going to his left hand, bad hand, He basically catches it behind him, left mitt, sticks it out. And then probably the best part of it is he just sticks the perfect dive, gets up immediately. And I don't know who he's pointing at, but he just gives it to the crowd. And I just, for me, I'll never forget that catch.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know if I want to add too much to that. That's brilliantly summed up. That's also
Brilliant.
my number 4. I'll tell you what also with that game is we actually end up winning that game. And a young Brendan McCullum sort of gets us home. And I was watching just sort of the last 20 runs of it today on YouTube. There's about a 12-minute clip. And I was so nostalgic for that period of cricket. I think we were chasing 230 or something. Yeah. It was Bill Laurie was on comms. 230 was one of those niggly scores. It might have been enough for Aussie. Today it would just be laughed at. But it was, and I think we needed 31 off 3 or something, which again, in today's cricket, it's
a lot back then.
Yeah, it was, the Aussie commentators naturally were, we were the rank outsiders. But yeah, we got home. It's a great finish. The commentary to it's just amazing. First, Chappell Hadlee sort of set the tone for what this could be as a series. I was watching that catch again, and so, I mean, we had Matt Sinclair, Jake Oram, who, let's be fair, was actually a pretty handy player, and Ian Butler, they were out there, and the Marshalls, and I was thinking, how did this team compete with your Matthew Haydens, your Glenn McGrath, your Shane Warnes? It was, I mean, no wonder we didn't win too often out there.
So that was your number 4. So I guess we're number 3. So Jacko, what's your number 3?
Yeah, so my top 3 was all pretty close for me. But I've gone in the 3 slot and happened in the first game of that 06-07 series with Shane Bond's hat trick. Involving that lovely Corton bowl to get Cameron White, I believe. I think he got 6 for fuck all and was unbelievable in that series. But yeah, that was just a great game for us to just really sort of bury them in the first series. Bondy to get a hat trick. I
don't think he got a hat trick in that game. I think he got
not that game. So I think we're combining 2 games.
Yeah, it's two different moments. But he got. No wonder it's so high on your list.
Yeah. I really remember that wrong. No wonder it's right up there.
I'm surprised that's not number 1 actually. Going by that. He got that. He got that hat trick in like the back end of an innings. We got pumped. It was over there. It was. It might have been the next year.
No, you're right. Yeah,
I am wrong. Next year.
But that game there with that hat trick, just us dominating the Aussies, like we never sort of had dominated them. So to open a series in Wellington with that sort of domination, Shane Bond's catch, Lou Vincent and Fleming knocked it off, none down, which at the time was the first time Aussie had ever been beaten by 10 wickets in an ODI, and it was their 670-odd ODI. So,
wow.
Yeah, big moment, and I had that at 3.
Yeah, that's a good one. It was on my honourable mentions list, and because it was a ridiculous catch, and to
probably goes down to 5 without a hat trick though. Is that
the best Corton bowled ever? Like
it's up there.
It's in the conversation. Like to get it down your boots like that is quite special. And obviously, like you said, Jacko, to win by 10 wickets against Aussie, you just don't see it. You just do not see it. And even though they didn't send an amazing Australian team, like it was still decent.
Oh yeah, there's still some serious players in that side. I was going to say the hat trick was going to be like just an honourable mention for me. And I thought, because I remember vividly like watching that live at the time, and it was like the 49.2, 3 and 4. I think he got Simon second. The first one was way out on the boundary, and then he cleaned up Bracken with a slower ball to get it.
I've merged a couple of games there, so that's that's my bad.
These things happen.
TMC, not a historically accurate podcast, but entertaining.
We just make up all sorts like fitness tests and Lugsy. What was your number 3?
Yeah, I've made this 3, but I really wanted to put it 5, and I thought I'd just try and win a few Aussie fans over. So I'm going Stoynes as 140.
Yeah, that's actually my number 3 as well.
Yeah. So we were actually on track for the same 5, 4, and 3, Munter, are we?
Well, what you have for 4?
Oh no! I had for 4. I had the Sinclair catch as well.
What was your 5?
No, we don't have 5 the same, but we're going to have that number 1 the same.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But yeah, the Stoynes 140. I think just because that game was absolutely gone from Aussie. And then I remember that he was starting to get a few, but it was still pretty gone. And, no sort of worries. And then it just kept happening. And this was a pretty unknown Stoinis at the time. I instantly remember thinking, this guy's got a bit about him. And then he started scoring some runs, and I thought, shit, he can play cricket as well.
He's really got a bit about him.
Yeah, so just the innings itself, he was just absolutely smoking it. It seemed like every ball was going out the ground. We were taking wickets from the other end. And then finally the way it ended, coming down to the wire with that run out. Yeah, just sort of glued in the memory.
Oh, it was massive. And because I was looking that up the other day, and it's just, there's so many things about it you forget. Like when Aussie were 220 for 9, chasing 286. And then, it's crazy when you think like Stoinis and Hazelwood put on 54 runs in 4 overs, and Hazelwood didn't face a ball. Like
that's actually absurd.
That's a stat that you probably won't see again. It's actually crazy. And then I just remember Stoinis hitting Southey for 2 sixes. Australia needed only 7 off 3 overs, and I remember Smithy just going he's got the game in the palm of his hands or something like that. And I was just you're damn right he does, Smithy. How about Hazelwood not facing a ball? The only way he fucks up is a run out. And that's what happens.
He's done it.
It's unbelievable. It was actually an unbelievable sort of moment. And I've actually got a wee trivia for you boys out of that game. So we set 286. Who was top scorer? Can you guess?
For the game?
Yeah, for New Zealand.
Martin Guptill.
Okay. Lugsy?
No, I've got nothing, mate.
It was Neil Broome with 73.
Wow.
Oh, Broomey.
Probably Stoinis probably robbed him of the man of the match, just quietly.
And rig of the match probably too. Hell of a chest on Neil Broome.
Right, okay, so obviously that was my number 3 as well. So
yep.
Jacko, what was your number 2?
Yeah, so my 2 was the Ross Taylor 100 game.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, that series, I had the highlights of that series on DVD as a nipper.
Oh, wow, that'll burn in your memory.
Which is why it's actually featured so heavily, because I used to watch that, basically, probably that was a weekly viewing for a year or two of a young Jackson's life. So, but yeah, for me, we sort of pants him in the first game, and then it was a bit like, wow, that's Aussie, that's not always going to happen. And then that run chase, we just sort of, we chased a big score, which, I mean, looking at it, I think at the time was one of the highest run chases ever in ODI cricket. It was soon to be surpassed by South Africa a year later that year, I think. But yeah, we just got set this impossible number, and we sort of did it 5 down and easy as you like, and to seal the victory of that series and beat Aussie in a series, that sort of was 2 for me.
I like that. I do appreciate it's sort of the winning of the series has sort of bumped it up. I like that. So my number 2, I've listed it as A Day Out at Eden Park by Ian Smith, and it could have easily been number 1, but I think for me, it's only because it's just technically a Chappell Hadlee game. It's not. And I think when I was looking up Chappell Hadlee games, I think the only 2 times were the 2011 World Cup and this 2015 World Cup were Chappell Hadlee games. So I had to count it, but I couldn't have it number 1. But it's just it could have, if it wasn't a World Cup game, it would have been number 1. It was just, I can't remember a game having so much hype beforehand. It sort of lived up to the expectations. You had Bolts 5 for 27. He had that spell of 5 wickets for 1 run and 3 overs. Aussie all out for 151 after being 80 for 1. Caps 78 for 1. McCullum 50 off 24 rocks, just absolutely pumping it everywhere. Mitchell Stark, that 6 for 28. Is that the best spell ever? It's got to be up there. It was so scary. We felt safe even in 145 for 6, and then in 4 or 5 balls, Vittori chips it to mid-on. Stark cleans up Milne, cleans up Stowley, and then suddenly Smithy and Warney are starting to chirp at each other, and you've got Warney sort of getting a bit. I couldn't see the comm box, but I can imagine Warney starting to stand up a bit, getting the chest out. Smithy getting all annoyed. and suddenly Bolt's got 2 balls to see out. It just seems like an inevitable that Stark's going to clean up Bolt. But he manages to see out these 2 balls and like the massive roar. And then like Williamson hitting that 6 out of absolute nowhere off Paddy Cummins. And then Smithy just giving it right back to Warney. It was just an amazing day. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that day.
Yeah, I mean, this is full disclosure, my number 2 as well, but I really just wanted to let you go there because that was again brilliant, sort of tearing the eye stuff looking back on this game. I think that biggest pop there was that Warney v Smith in the box, and you could tell they got on so well, but you could also tell Smithy wanted it so bad. They were just chirping away. I have to say, this was actually on my brother's wedding day, this game of cricket. So I wasn't watching it live, but there was a group of probably 7 or 8 of us. We had gone out to the car park and we were all huddled around a car listening to it on Radio Sport. So it's just sort of one of the great memories for me is watching the old brother get married and then hopping out to the car park to hear the end of this game of cricket. And obviously the brother's obviously keen on sport as well, and it's sort of a lot of people there were. So we're all sort of messaging updates, and updates are coming through as the wedding's happening. And we're starting to hear, the first update we get is we only need, 50 to win. We're 1 down, we're a bit. And then a text keeps coming through and like, we've lost a wicket. We've lost another wicket. We're 6 down. Stark's got 6, but we're 9 down. We're going to lose. And the absolute roar from the crowd as Kane hits that 6. One of the great memories. And I think you touched on it there with Stark. But he is one of the few bowlers where sometimes he runs in and you're like, he's bowling those fast Yorkers. He is going to get a wicket every single ball.
Yeah.
I think he bowled a spell against the West Indies where he was going round the wicket and just cannoning them into leg. And I was like, there's just not a chance these West Indians face us.
Those 2 balls Bolt had to face, I was paying $1.01. He was getting settled. Like, it felt like about 10 years watching those 2 balls.
Yeah.
And he's left the first one. Stark's missed by heaps.
Yeah, he got one of them wrong, Stark?
Yeah. Funny that's what you guys had at 2, because that's what I had at 1.
Yeah.
Slightly different list. But yeah, I mean, there was just being a part of like that game in New Zealand, obviously, but having the World Cup here.
Yeah.
We had won a few games. Aussie had won a few games. I think we were the only 2 undefeated teams at the World Cup at that stage. And it was sort of like that younger brother, like, are New Zealand actually good, or is Aussie going to put them in their place here? And as you said, it really felt like at 140 odd for 6, we'd sort of buried them and sort of, introduced ourselves as the World Cup favourites. And then it was sort of nearly all over. And then Bolt had 2 balls. And then, Kane sort of slogged one into the stands out of nowhere. And yeah, what a game. One of the great roller coasters, and not often a sort of, you win a game with 160 balls to spare in white ball cricket, nearly bowled out for 150. But yeah, 140 plays 140 is not normally that exciting, but yeah, that was one hell of a game.
I was going to say, that's got to be, there'll never be a better 140 plays 140 game of cricket, will there?
The Aussie versus Zimbabwe game the other day probably wouldn't come close, to be fair. I think 1 and 2. It seems like 1 and 2 is pretty much the same.
I think I just need to touch on that game number 1 again, because for our number 1, Matt, to spend a couple of minutes on how big that was. Well, as a 32-year-old man that I am now, that still sort of runs around the flat if Ronaldo scores a goal, I'm not afraid of getting quite excited for cricket or sport in general. So as a 17-year-old, this is probably sort of, and I have to say, I thought maybe I was slightly younger because I'm looking at the way I was acting back then and sort of hitting me that I was actually 16, 17 at the time. But this is sort of my peak probably love of cricket here. And I remember coming home from school, it was a Friday, I believe, to watch the end of the cricket and watching Matt Hayden get that 180, all the talk about his broken foot. And that, and the score they got was just so, back in those days, it was just so unbelievable to think we could chase that down. And especially having only done it a week before, we couldn't possibly do it again. And then for Mac, so probably my 2 favourite players at that time are McMillan and McCullum. And I just remember I was like, and McMillan was always sort of hated in the media a bit for not performing as much as he should. So to see him get this 100, and he didn't even know he had got it at the time, and then see his reaction when he finally realised he had, I was going absolutely nuts.
Well, he had been out of the side for a while as well, which sort of made it, Rigger had that classic like gladiator is back sort of.
Yes. Yeah. And then we sort of, McCullum, it's very still, there's still a lot of work to do when McCullum comes in. And to see him get us home, I was genuinely had full memory of I was out the sliding door and I was straight down the street, hands in the air, charging around, did a lap, just going, the Black Caps have done it. So just a hell of a good memory of an amazing series, really.
I could probably shuffle that up to 2 because I'd actually forgotten about that game about sort of Mark Gillespie's innings too.
Yeah, I had that down. Yeah,
which was
an amazing
20 out of 15.
Yeah, in hindsight, I mean, for me, I was probably a bit younger. I don't have many clear memories of the game itself watching it. My only memory of the game is Gillespie's knock, like getting all those French cuts.
Yeah.
And watched, like, a lot of it obviously stemmed from me rewatching that highlight package, which sort of took the gloss off it potentially. But yeah, I mean, happy to shuffle that up into the 2 slot. And yeah, it's right there with that one-day win, isn't it? And the World Cup.
It's up there. And I think you boys touched on it all. And I think for me, the biggest part of it all, it was the fact that the boys weren't just chasing 347. They were 41 for 4.
Yeah.
And then I just think, like, I would say 99 times out of 100, a team's losing that.
Wasp, very low.
Yeah, Wasp is very, very low. So, and probably the fact that it's we were just younger at the time. It's right at a sweet spot for me and Lugsy.
New Zealand bowling attack in that game was quite something compared to the Aussies. We've got Tuffy, Franklin, Gillespie, Jeeton Patel, Scott Styris, and Craig McMillan.
Yeah, no, there's a reason we're chasing 340.
Some rough years as Black Caps fans.
What about how we left that thinking like we're a chance at this World Cup, and we absolutely got dusted. Probably we might have to skip Coach Corner and just do a wee quick out or not out.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, just quickly, that's got the juices absolutely flowing for Tuesday.
Yeah. If that doesn't get if that doesn't get you going for Australia versus New Zealand, Chappell Hadlee, I don't know what. So, boys, out or not out this week is, to be honest, it's just an excuse to talk about Jonny Bairstow because it's a couple of things here. It's one of the more freak accidents, probably. Like it's sort of, it really took me by surprise when I seen a wee Instagram from Jonny saying that there was a freak accident on the golf course and he was out for the 3rd test, the T20 World Cup. Must have been a pretty serious injury. And we don't actually know what the injury is yet, do we?
No, just lower leg.
Lower leg. So it could be Achilles, could be a broken leg, could be anything. And I guess out or not out is there's a bit of a rumour going around the traps about how this injury happened. And Jackson, you forwarded on to us yesterday, I believe. If you want to sort of,
I was sort of forwarded it from another party as well. Cricket circles, these sort of things do the round pretty quickly. Bairstow's since addressed these rumours himself, but we'll start with the rumour first. So apparently, according to this message, the England players had 10k each on this game of golf with. And Bairstow's on the last green, needing to sink a birdie putt to win it, essentially. And the rumour's gone, Ben Stokes has 2 foot slid tackled him on the green, mid-putt, and basically cooked his leg. Which, yeah, I mean, Bairstow's come out and claimed it's sort of not happened. He's never been to that golf course. He hasn't seen Ben Stokes in weeks, all of that sort of jazz. But, yeah, it's sort of stemmed a question for me is if he is covering up for Ben Stokes, it's a hell of a thing to cover up, and if he's not, what sort of act from Stokes is like the turning point of like, no, I've got to out this guy versus no, I should probably just cover that up sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of I don't know if it's our accents or what's gone on there, because for some reason when you forwarded that message, I genuinely believed it. And then sort of
it came from an English accent. How was it not to be believed?
The way you've summed it up, I'm sort of thinking that is so ridiculous. So maybe I don't quite believe it now, because I just genuinely just thought, oh yeah, that's pretty outrageous. But that's probably happened. Yeah, it does get us to a weird point of like, yeah, what you would cover up for your skipper. I mean, he's got to be absolute. I'm all over the show whether I believe this or not now, because he's got to be absolutely shattered, Bairstow. And the way he said he hasn't even seen Stokes in weeks, that's almost like going too far to cover it up.
Yeah.
It's just Ben Stokes.
I can't believe he even tried to deny it. I just thought it was absolutely laughable.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the English captain just 2-footing his star player for the last 5 or 6 tests?
Yeah.
And also just a bit
on
of
a putting green.
Yeah, I was going to say just a bit of golfing etiquette, on a putting green. Come on.
I'd love some comms of anyone that played Granton recently to see what sort of state the 18th green's in.
Who's this rogue guy that's decided that's the story he's gonna go with?
I don't know. I reckon, to be honest, I believed it right up until the end, because if they were putting money on it, that's a BMAC. It's BMAC all over it.
Yeah,
that is BMAC. Just let's punt on this sort of thing. So I sort of believed it right up to the end.
I thought it was going to be. You know how you see those viral videos of blokes just ploughing into their mates in golf carts. I sort of thought that's where the message was going, and I thought that's pretty rogue, but something you could sort of throw off as an accident, I've accidentally been hit by a golf cart sort of thing. But yeah, when it was he's been 2-footed on the 18th green, I was like, yeah, that's probably not really it.
Do you reckon it's you boys would have seen the Dark Knight? Is it sort of like when Batman takes the fall for what Harvey Dent did, because he wants he's the Gotham need a hero.
England cricket
need a hero. That's Ben Stokes. So he could have done it. He could have done it, but England, if their hero Ben Stokes came out and he was a villain, it just would shatter everything.
Yeah. England cricket falls apart.
Well, because Ben Stokes, he is having this sort of resurgence, I guess. I guess he's sort of following a similar role to how McCullum was over here, where the end of his career is really going to determine sort of how he's looked back on. And he is just in this golden run of being their hero, but it certainly hasn't been all sort of roses for him.
No.
And he still sort of comes across as that quite hard-nosed guy that sort of may do something quite rogue like that.
Sort of might slide tackle a bloke, yeah.
I'm not completely willing to rule this out yet.
I still think he could have driven into him with a golf cart.
What do we actually think happened? What are we actually thinking?
Well, he isn't, because it's not like Bairstow's just, it's not like they came out and said it was a freak injury, I was in the middle of my swing and this happened. Didn't they just say it's freak injury and left it there?
Yeah, I've slipped and I'm out for, they haven't, surely if it's I slipped and popped my Achilles, you're okay, people pop their Achilles all the time, but it's I've slipped, I've got a lower leg injury, surely disclose it, and you'd be okay, that sort of sums up, that could maybe happen slipping, but, I mean, golf's not a very dangerous sport, and for that to sort of rule you out automatically of a World Cup that's nearly 2 months away, I don't know if he slipped, that's for sure.
It's going to be a fascinating story to watch, actually, and sort of develop there. I'm hoping for something a bit wild.
He'll come out at some point. So Simon might sort of be in on this story, but
Simon's not out on the story.
I thought was are we out or not out on 2-footing our mates on the golf course? So there I'm sort of there I'm probably don't do that. But does the story have some more sort of leads coming? I think there's something more coming, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's definitely something they're not telling us.
Yeah, 100%.
Just before we go, as you've obviously reviewed the Ben Stokes doco, a couple of things you just didn't tell me about, which I thought were massive, is Benfest. Where are we at that on a birthday fun?
Benfest.
So
for his birthday, he sort of just ran a festival. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Surely he hasn't run it. Surely that's not his idea. Yeah. You can't be doing that, surely.
Nah.
I think he has gone to himself.
Yeah, are we
surely he could just go to Glastonbury and get VIP tickets or something for his birthday if he wanted to actually hit a festy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what also jumped out at me was a couple of comments from his I don't want to seem like an expert or sort of talk about a man's relationship, but that didn't exactly look smooth sailing from her couple of cameos. I thought she's made the two comments which are always pretty big red flags. Of one, when he's here, I know he wants to be out playing cricket, which I didn't think was great, and B, as sort of Ben Stokes is just looking at the camera without sort of giving too much of a face. She's gone, we've had a lot of ups and downs,
Not coming home from a night out and beating a bloke up in town and getting a call from the cops probably isn't going to be one of the ups, is it?
No. It looks, I tell you what was a massive win, though, is over these 3 years, is what a comeback from his here. So that he was down and out for a while there at the start of this doco, and now it is flowing.
Yeah,
it's sleek as you're not.
That sort of blonde pulled forward look just wasn't for him, was it?
No, that was no good.
Yeah.
Righto, we'll call that a day. Thanks again to the award-winning listeners. Thank you to the co-hosts, Lugsy and Jacko. If you do enjoy what you're listening to, please do like, subscribe, rate and review. And if you love it, chuck us a wee follow on the Patreon at patreon.com/maximumcricket. You do get early access to these podcasts. We are just trialing that for now until we can figure out some extra stuff for that. So if that sounds like you, sign up. But if not, that's all good. And we'll catch you boys next week.
Yep, catch ya.
Too easy, mate. Thanks. Catch you, boys.